Welcome to our memorial gathering for Margo St. James, who died on January 11th. I welcome you on behalf of the Margo Memorial Collective. Many of us knew and worked with Margo, and all of us have been inspired by her work and example. You will hear from most of us and others whose lives Margo touched during this program. I'm Carol Queen from the Center for Sex and Culture. And thanks to the movement Margo launched, I had a pretty seamless entry into sex work in the late 1980s. I worked in the sex trade for about 10 years, wrote about it, and learned a lot that supplemented and surpassed my academic sexology program. I have another thing in common with Margo. We both grew up in the rural Pacific Northwest. She was born in Bellingham, Washington on September 12th, 1937. Margo came to San Francisco just months after I was born, a young artist who settled in the North Beach that had been adopted and transformed by the Beats. Her activism origin story is iconic and ironic. She had such a frisky San Francisco social life that she was busted for prostitution. When she told the judge that she had never turned a trick in her life, the judge ruled that she was guilty, because a nice girl wouldn't even know what that meant. Her conviction prompted her to take the college equivalency exam and go to law school. She didn't finish her legal studies, but used them to successfully appeal her conviction. She said years later that the erroneous conviction actually led her to becoming a prostitute. The bust meant that many jobs were off the table for her. She served summonses for famed criminal defense attorney Vincent Hallinan, and later became one of California's first female private detectives. On Mother's Day in 1973, Margo St. James founded COYOTE, Call Off Your Old Tired Ethics, the first prostitutes' rights organization in the United States. COYOTE focused on outreach and advocacy to prostitutes who had been arrested, emphasizing the need to prioritize those who were most impacted by prostitution laws. Margo's political alliances brought national exposure and a wide range of contacts, countercultural bigwigs included. She created the notorious Hookers Balls, which attracted thousands to the Cow Palace. Everyone made the scene, even Prince Charles. The Hookers Balls financed Margo's rabble-rousing, as well as the publication of her newspaper, Coyote Howls. By 1979, the paper had 60,000 subscribers, about 3% of whom were prostitutes. And Margo's following was growing. Her office at Pier 40 was burned down, but the Hookers Ball show went on. Her entrance was always an affair, but that year, she entered the Cow Palace on Margie the Elephant. Margo continued organizing around the country, and Coyote's sister organizations sprang up. Hire, Hooking is Real Employment in Atlanta. Puma, Prostitutes Union of Massachusetts. Pony, Prostitutes of New York. And Dolphin, Dump Obsolete Laws, Prove Hypocrisy Isn't Necessary in Hawaii. Margo led COYOTE until she left San Francisco for Europe for several years in 1985. For the next decade, she lived first in the Netherlands and then in the south of France with activist Gail Peterson, whom she met in 1982. Gail worked with Margo and the COYOTE network in the Bay Area to organize the Women's Forum on Prostitutes' Rights and the COYOTE Convention, coinciding with the 1984 Democratic Convention that was held in San Francisco. Together with Carol Lee, Priscilla Alexander, and Gloria Lockett, Margo and Gail also mobilized bad girl rap groups for any woman who has ever been stigmatized as bad for her work, color, class, sexuality, history of abuse, or just plain gender. They all knew that whore stigma touches the lives of many who are not whores, as well as those who embrace that identity or who simply exchange sexual services or entertainment for money or daily needs. In Europe, Margo and Gail founded the International Committee for Prostitutes' Rights and organized the first World Whores Congress in Amsterdam, 1985, and the second World Whores Congress in the European Parliament in Brussels in 1986. Out of the congresses, attended by sex workers from 18 countries, came a World Charter for Prostitutes' Rights. Margo was far from a one-trick activist. so to speak. And she was, from many years of prostitutes' rights organizing in San Francisco, deeply connected to SF city politics. In 1996, when she came back, she ran for supervisor, and she very nearly won. It was during this period that I spent the most time with her. I was honored to co-host a public access TV show, Streetwise, with her. Margo came in 7th in the supervisor's race, and the top 6 vote getters were seated. I wonder how it would have changed history if she'd gotten just a few more votes. Margo's work on behalf of prostitutes culminated in the St. James Infirmary, an occupational health and safety clinic for and run by sex workers. Activists worked with the San Francisco Department of Public Health to launch the clinic in 1999, and it still serves the community today. New generations of sex workers and bad girls and those of many other gender identities have stepped up to work the cultural fields that Margo plowed. Since Margo left San Francisco to go back to Washington State, the Bay Area has seen decriminalization of prostitution appear on the ballot twice. We've had slut walks and branches of the Sex Workers Outreach Project emerge all over the place. The Red Umbrella Network is global. And as usual, there are parts of the world that are far ahead of the United States when it comes to achieving justice and better working and post-work conditions for sex workers. Even as I speak, other states are tackling laws that criminalize prostitutes, prostitution, and those, like Margo once was, who are simply assumed to be prostitutes. 10 US states now have significant proposals in place related to decriminalization and sex workers' rights. Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New York, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, and Louisiana. And we also mourn and rage over the deaths and injustices that remain. Stigma is not a strong enough word to help us explain the predations of the Green River Killer or all the other serial predators who target prostitutes. That case moved activists to gather each December 17th, which we commemorate as the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. This year, we must acknowledge the massacre that happened just 6 weeks ago in Atlanta and stand in support of our immigrant neighbors and against Asian hate. Understanding intersectionality helps us see, as Margo did, that multiple points of identity can make some of us more vulnerable than others. In this year of action and clarity around Black Lives Matter, we know that being Black, BIPOC, and trans can also render sex workers more vulnerable to violence. Margo was honored in February with a resolution by San Francisco's Board of Supervisors, the very governing body she almost joined 25 years earlier. February 14th was named Margo St. James Day. She takes her place in San Francisco's pantheon of citizen activists who have made this city what it is, and certainly what it was in the last 30 years of the 20th century, which was a damned amazing time to live in San Francisco. Without her as a predecessor and friend, I'm sure I'd not have lived the same life I've had. And I know many of us could say the same. Thanks, Margo, for changing my life, changing our town, and changing the world. So welcome to our tributes to Margo, her life and impact. These statements will be archived on the margostjames.com website if you want to revisit these memories or tell others who couldn't be with us today. Thanks to everyone who contributed, especially Bambi and the brilliant young activists of the Old Pros Project. Without further ado, the life and legacy of the one, the only Margo St. James.